Hello, and welcome to our town. Today, it's a privilege and an honor to talk about a civil servant in our community who has served our community for over 40 years. The person I'm going to be introducing to you is Police Chief Roger Beaupre. Hello, Roger. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. We're going to talk today about a little bit of your life, your experiences on the police force, going over the numerous years that you've been on the police department, and also to about a little bit of your early years prior to that. You're the son of Paul and Jean Beaupre. The parents had a well-established business in the city of Biddeford years ago.
Yes.
Was known as Beaupre's Gas and Appliance. And also, too, you attended St. Andrew's School, grammar school.
I did.
You graduated from St. Louis High School.
I did.
And you graduated from the class of 1967.
Right.
After you graduated from St. Louis, you entered the military.
I did.
And those years were from 1967 to 1971.
Correct.
What branch of service did you enter?
Air Force.
The Air Force. And what was your MOS that you picked to go into the Air Force?
Military police.
Military police. And you did that for 4 years. And you finished with the rank of
Sergeant.
Sergeant.
Yep.
Can you describe a little bit to me about your military career?
Once I completed basic training, I was forwarded to base in Missouri for advanced training on military police operations and procedures. That was about, I would say, well, it felt like a long time, but it was about 14, 16 weeks in duration. Then I worked assigned to base police. And that started off with gate, usually the junior employee or the junior military person would be assigned to the back gates rather than the main gates. And even then it started off with, you start with the bottom and you work your way through.
That's right.
And then eventually, I was assigned to a car. And then during my tour of duty, my first year there was visiting staffers from Offutt Air Force Base, which is the SAC headquarters at the time, which no longer exists.
Right.
And they were looking for recruiting military police officers throughout the United States to be handpicked to work in their headquarters building as SAC and the military police special unit.
And some people who don't know what SAC means, it's Strategic Air Command.
That's what it stands for, yes.
Right.
Curtis LeMay, I believe, was
he was a big inspirational about that.
Yep. And there are movies about that, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Black and white.
Are you in there?
No, I'm not. That was way back before my time. Yeah. So I was handpicked, so they traveled me to Omaha, and that was pretty good duty. It was kind of a spit and polish outfit. They called the SAC Elite Guard. Right. And from there, after about another year, I volunteered to go overseas and was selected to go to Taiwan.
How'd you like that duty?
That was interesting, to say the least. Of course, there was no opportunity to go on leave.
Right.
And I was assigned base police there. Then I was, after 2 months of serving with base police, I was selected to go to town patrol.
Oh, wow.
Living quarters were off base, and we worked with the Armed Forces Police of the Chinese Armed Forces Police to work with them to maintain the bars. I didn't find that as interesting because all you do all night long is go through bars and in and out.
Bottle brawls.
Yeah, well, no, there weren't that many of them, surprisingly enough. Military people pretty much behaved. And then I went to detectives for a while, and then they assigned me to supervise 15 other officers in the base police shift.
Wow.
And that motivated me a lot. Then time came to come back home and reestablish myself
in Biddeford.
In Biddeford.
And,
yeah. And that was in June of 1971 when I was transferred back.
June.
The latter part of June, almost in July. And I remember coming back. Of course, the temperature there is substantially warmer than it is here. And I remember wearing a jacket all summer long because I couldn't stay warm.
Wow. Wow. And in 1970, on November 19th, 1971, you joined the Biddeford Police Department.
I was hired by the police commission at that time, yeah.
Yeah. And what was your reason to become a police officer?
Well, I said in the first taping, and I guess I forgot that part. The second one, yeah.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties,
Right.
folks. So,
Right.
Thank
ahead.
God for the new studio coming.
It's coming.
Okay. And where was I? Where was I going? Oh yes, I wanted to become a police officer since I was high school, and I remember having a conversation with a guy that used to work for my dad, who had experienced his career in the Air Force, and kind of convinced me that that's the road I should take, and get the experience that I would need to assist me in civilian life. And it did. It was great advice. It worked for me.
It doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't work for everybody, and it doesn't always work out the way people planned or promise you that it's going to work out, but it worked out fine for me. I started on the force with the expectation that I was going to do good for the city and do something I was longing to do. And then
You were a patrol officer. You were a patrol officer.
Right. And I remember at the time is that I was directed to go. Langevin men's store had the pants and the shirts, and Feinberg's had the badges and the cuffs and those types of things.
Right.
And at that time, the only thing that the department would furnish is give you 2 pair of pants, 2 shirts, a jacket, and a hat, 1 badge for the outerwear, and 1 badge for the hat. Leather gear that you had to buy yourself. Handcuffs had to buy yourself. Shoes you had to buy. As a matter of fact, they didn't even give us a pen. So I don't know whether the expectation was to write anything at all, but
no tickets.
But
no tickets.
So they didn't provide. You had to bring your own pens, and you had to bring your own paper.
Wow.
So those are the things that. Well, I was reading something interesting just to kind of go away from the topic a little bit. I remember Edgar Sivany got a severance pay when he retired in 1973. He received 3 weeks' pay of $608. That was 3 weeks' pay, $608, and that, that was considered a lot of money. As chief. Yeah.
As chief. And in the first year when you were there from 1971 to 73. We're talking right now. You served under 2 police chiefs at that time when you first went on the force.
Yeah.
One was, like we mentioned, just Chief Edgar Sivany, and the other was Harry Courtois. And in those early years on the police force, you went to the military Main Justice Academy?
Well, yeah, at that point. When I first started, I was assigned to work with, you were always paired up with somebody else through the training process. And there's a couple things that I found rather disconcerting as a new patrol officer coming in. Now, don't forget, I had virtually 4 years of previous experience as a law enforcement officer, and I come in and I deal with a person who'd been on the force a few years, and was trying to explain to me, this is the radio, this is you press the mic to talk, and I'm saying, well, we have this stuff, the same stuff that and where I come from, but I didn't want to come across as know-it-all, so I just sat and listened. But I asked him, I says, okay, they gave, I have to go buy a gun and some bullets. Where do you go target practice? How do you practice it? Oh, they don't. It's like, and without any formal training, they stuck you in a car and rode around for a couple days with a guy. And then on the 3rd day, you were on the street walking the beat. And that was the predominant attitude at that time. The holidays were coming around when I got hired, so therefore stores were open. At least 5 days a week until 9 o'clock at night, and the people were shopping downtown.
Right,
The
yeah.
malls didn't exist those days.
No, they didn't. And Main Street was really bustling in those years.
There was a lot of people, yeah.
It was
and-
bustling
yeah.
till the malls came along, and then after that, of course, it went. Let explain to me how. Of course, if a lot of people in the community don't know this, but the original police station was located right below City Hall, on Adams Street,
Correct.
on the side. Give me your brief description on how that police station was.
Well, at that time, it was, you came in, the door swung both ways. You know, literally swung both ways. But the problem with that, if the strong gust of wind would blow, of course, there was no vestibule, so the door would open as well with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And to your immediate right as you walked in was a desk.
Right.
And that's where the person who greeted the public, dispatched the cars, answered the telephone.
Correct.
And there were two telephone lines coming into that office at that time. That's all there was for us to use. Two lines. And there was a phone that the desk officer used, and there was one phone out back where the officers did the reports. Now, as you came into the building, walked up 3 steps, and there was a landing in the back, and the room was no bigger than probably 10 by 12. That's where the officers had their briefings, did their reports, took their lunch. There was a coffee machine there. There was you had to put a dime in to get a cup of coffee.
At that time.
Yeah.
And today you're paying $1.50 for a cup of coffee.
Well, you know, today we have a coffee brewer.
True.
K-cups didn't exist then. And it was adjacent to the cell block.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we had no janitors. We had to clean the place, you know, in
Right.
addition to
Right.
do the beat stuff. And it would always smell of urine, you know, because there were no toilets in those cells. And one day I looked, I opened the window to let, you know, it was warm that day, opened the window adjacent to where, you know, that back room is, and there were bars, and, you know, 1-inch, you know, thick bars in the windows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, well, what if, and there's only one door coming in. And the chief's office, which was immediately adjacent, that was locked.
Was
all
it
the
the
time.
chief's office upstairs at the
No,
time?
no, at the time it was all the way in the back.
All the way in the back.
Yeah. There was a cell block to the right, chief's office, fingerprint room, and, you know, we were in the common area. And everything was barred. So I'm saying, well, what if, you know, if we'd had a fire back here? The chief's office had 2 windows in it, but you couldn't get in because the door was locked. But that was barred as well, and there was no second means of egress. And even if you wanted to jump out the window, you were finished. And the toilet that we could use was immediately to the left as you walked in the door, and it was about 2.5 feet wide by about 4 feet deep. You know, more room in my camper than there was in that facilities. But I tell you, they motivated you to get out of there because it was just as cold in there as outside.
But they had some space upstairs, didn't they? Where the city manager's office is today.
Well, the city managers is today. That was converted with Harry Courtois, and he took over as chief back in '73.
Right.
Tried to, you know, instill a more, you know, professionalize the department, and do things that weren't traditionally done when I first came on.
Right.
And they made a squad room in that room where the city manager's office
is today. Right. Now you attended different schooling in those 2 years, from '71 to '73. Which ones did you attend?
Well, then, you know, after a couple months, I went to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy in January, because, you know, you've got to go when they're offered.
Right.
So I completed the basic school there, then came back to the agency,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, typical day was, you know, 3 o'clock when you came in, you went out and walked your beat till 5:30 when the stores closed, and then you came in, had lunch all together, and if you were fortunate enough to be assigned to one of the 2 cars that were available,
That's true.
you went out. Otherwise, you went to check your beat, you know, on foot, acted like security guards mostly. What I found interesting, what bothered me a lot back then is, you know, you make observations, is that why would everybody eat at the same time? You know, that means there's nobody on the street during the periods you're all having lunch together.
Right. Right.
So, you just make mental notes of those things. Then, uh, like I said, Harry Courtois took over the department from Edgar Sivany when he retired in '73. He tried to implement a variety of forms, a record-keeping system, and um, and those types of
Right.
things.
Okay, let's go into from 1973 to 1974. Again, you served under the two chief. One was Harry Courtois, and the other one was Al Morin, Jr. And in that time frame, you rose to the rank of sergeant in those years. And also, you served under two mayors, Mayor Gil Bushy and Lucien Dutremble. Explain me about that year, Roger.
Well, in '73, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, and then once I got, attained that rank, I decided, I says, well, the wave of the future is coming that, a high school education is not going to be sufficient in order to continue being promoted or take over a department. So I started taking courses at the university. I started with one to see how that would work out, and I enjoyed it enough that then I took three.
Three courses.
The three courses, and I would complete those on my days off. Travel back and forth to university, and I would take additional ones in the summertime. Take 4 courses in the summer, and I completed my 4-year degree in 4 years. And in between, and I graduated, I believe, in '77. From that, and in between '74, I made lieutenant.
Oh, we'll get to that after.
Okay.
We're going to go into there. How many? We're going back when we're going from '71. We'll say '71 to '74. How many police officers were in the police force at that time?
32.
32 people. Wow. Okay, well, we're going to go into from '74 to '77, and in those years, you rose to the rank of lieutenant.
Right.
Okay. You served under one chief, which was Al Morin Jr., and one mayor, which was Lucien Dutremble. What was it like in those years? And
Well, as I moved up the ranks, I got more intimately involved in the administration of the department. We created a set of internal rules and regulations that were really not existent before.
right,
Created a variety of forms. I took a lot of the training that I received in the military
right,
and brought it
yeah,
into this job.
yeah,
Tried to institute more in-service training opportunities for the guys to be more proficient in doing their job.
more professional.
Right. But things were what they were.
Right,
You know.
right. Because don't forget, in those years that you were in the service, those years that when you entered the police department, you were, a high school education. You had a high school education. A lot of these officers probably didn't have a high school education at the time
They didn't know.
when they went in those early years.
There was, I remember there was like only 4 or 5 of us that had anything beyond, had a high
Right,
school education.
right, right.
Um,
Was
8th grade was a prevalent educational component.
that's
And you
right.
know what? You're talking some 40 years ago, and those guys who were on the force when I first started had been on there for 30 years themselves.
Right.
So it was not uncommon, like when my dad went to school. It was not uncommon in those days that people got married after high school, 18, 19 years old,
oh,
as
yeah.
it's unheard of today.
Of course.
And the education on, 8th grade was enough because the people
Yeah.
went to work in the mills.
That's right,
And
exactly.
had to support families. You only had one car, maybe, in the driveway. You didn't have 2, 3, 4. You had one TV, maybe, in the house, not one in every
And the
room.
TV was like this. The screen was probably like this at the
Well,
time.
it was
Or
black
a little
and
bit
white,
bigger.
and yeah.
It was
So things were different back then.
right,
Expectations were different, and
right.
and people were nice.
Yeah, they were. They were. Because, of course, like I said, the mill, when you first went on the force again, the mills were really brewing at that time.
Yes, they were.
You
They
know,
were
and
running
were
3
going
shifts, yeah.
full blast.
Yep,
And
yep.
it was 3 shifts, 7 almost. Some of them were 7 days a week. Some
They
of
were,
some
yep.
of those departments. It was amazing. What can you tell me? Can you reflect on going back in those years? What did you experience in those years as a lieutenant, and what was the Well, we know the city in the early years used to have, people. What was the crime rate like, I should say?
Well, obviously the way things were handled were different back then as they are today. And I'd like to touch upon that a little bit.
Sure.
I think that when you dealt with a juvenile offender as an officer, you were able to take the kid home and speak with the parents about the behavior of the kids. And the parents generally took you at your word, supported what you had found, and they would take care of disciplining the child, where it was basically unheard of taking a kid to court for a violation of law. By the same token, most people handled their property disputes between themselves rather than calling the police to take care of their issues. Today, we're dealing with, 3, 4, 5, 6 harassment calls or complaints, a day, and per shift.
Per shift?
Never mind
Wow.
per day. People just are not willing to take the responsibility for their own actions and rather not deal with it and call the police department to take care of their minor problems. But then again, too, is that the societal differences are great between then and now. People were pretty much family members. They all knew each other. They worked together. They socialized with each other. They belonged to different fraternal organizations, and there was a lot of local things going on that everybody knew everybody else.
That's true. That's true.
And there was a lot more respect for each other's property. There was more respect for each other's individuality, and there was generally respect for other people's privacy. Well, to a degree.
Yeah, it was. In those
Gossip
years,
still existed as it does today.
right. And a lot of people don't know like what you and I experienced over our years in Biddeford, because I've lived here almost all my life, except for a few years in the military. And I've seen tremendous changes over the years here in Biddeford, but people do not know what you and I went through when we were young.
And the thing is that, is that we're dealing with fewer officers on the street than we did when I first started. Of course, we got different things to do than we did back then. For the most part, you could virtually walk to handle a complaint because everything was centralized.
Right.
If you lived beyond the Westbrook skating rink, you lived, oh my goodness, you lived out of town.
Right.
And the lines of demarcation were Granite Street and 5 Points. It's like even 5 Points was unheard
I
of.
was just getting ready to mention that.
And if you went beyond Birch Street, it's like you lived out in the boonies. And everybody lived in an apartment.
Right.
And so therefore your issues were more confined and compartmentalized, if you will. And then, of course, when Biddeford started to expand, and I think FHA had a lot to do with that, creating those single-family homes that made it affordable for people to buy at that time, and moved out of the apartments and went on to what they call affordable housing.
Yeah. Like you're saying, it's true, because I was going to mention 5 Points, because not like it is today. People, it's almost like farm country up on the Alpha Road, compared to what it is today,
Well, I remember as a kid where 5 Points was controlled by stop signs and never mind traffic lights. It's like, I get it today.
A 5-way stop sign.
Well, yeah.
That's about it, right?
Well,
Yeah.
And until they improved the Alfred Road, a few years ago, there didn't seem to be that much traffic on Alfred Street on the other end. It was a 2-lane highway. Now it's a 4-lane and backed up every day.
And we're gonna go between 1977 and 78. At that time, you rose to the rank of captain.
Yep.
Under Chief Moran and Mayor Duchambeau. And in 1978, also that same year, you were promoted to the rank of acting deputy chief.
No, deputy chief.
Deputy chief.
Yeah.
Okay. You did this until 1980. Explain me those years, Roger. And what did you implement in were you implementing different programs at the time for the
Well, we were,
department?
you know, there's so many programs that, you know, developed and thought about. I wanted then, as I do still today,
Right.
want to be progressive and institute and control programs that are effective in the way we do a delivery of service, and keep those that are and eliminate those that aren't. Not afraid to make changes for the positive, recognizing, of course, that change is not always positive, that some changes end up being have negative consequences,
Right.
and we make tweaks and adjustments to those programs that don't work. Of course, we were dealing with an old station, an old facility that had no opportunity for
right.
in-service training. There was a small room
Right.
that provided us no access
Right.
to records. As a matter of fact, everybody shared one law book, and you know, and that had to, the law book that I had to be borrowed from a state police officer who was kind enough to give me his expired version of the
Wow.
statutes. And I'm saying this can't continue. You can't professionalize a department if you don't train them on what the law changes are, or at least what the laws are of today. And it's you know, looking back on it, that was terrible. It was a very it was a disservice you know, to the citizens,
Right.
for not having trained police officers out there.
There's one thing that just came across my mind, and what was the budget like in those years?
$225,000 a year.
And today?
Well, today it's, you know, you spend that in a week. You know.
You're right, that's true. But in 1979, you were very instrumental in, you were deputy chief, and you were very instrumental in moving from the old station to the new station. And of course, a new police facility, and became a reality at that time, of all those years being to the old station, which was there for a good numerous years. And it was named Dutrumbull. The facility today is called Dutrumbull, Montville, and Goulet Police Facility. And at that time, of course, was Chief Moran and, of course, Mayor Dutrumbull. Why was this police facility named under these three individuals?
Well, the names were selected because those three died within, you know, while in the line of duty.
By line of duty?
Yeah.
And can you recall what happened to their circumstances? Do you reflect anything on that?
Well, Dutrumbull was shot off of running board of a car. It was suspected bank robbers, and he was on the walking beat at the time, and they were riding down the street, and he jumped onto the running board to stop to apprehend the robbers, and he was killed, you know,
Right.
shot.
Right.
The other two were because of heart attacks in the line of duty.
Line of duty.
Yeah. So while they were handling one was I'm not sure which one, but one was after investigating a fatal accident involving St. Francis College students at the time, you know, on the Pool Road where that rock crop is, you know, that new section where almost by the old Notre Dame Hospital.
Okay. All right.
You know,
Yeah.
right in there was it was, I guess.
Well, it used to be not Seal Rock. It used to be the old Seal Rock facility. Around Notre Dame Hospital, Seal Rock facility. Well, it turned up from Notre Dame to Seal Rock, but it changed. But now it's closed. Everything's closed up there. So we're in the new facility right now, and let's put it this way. What did you feel when you moved into this new facility? What did you implement into this new facility?
Well, let's go from the old to the new.
Okay.
The new building was selected because it was an empty theater. It wasn't
Right.
being used for anything
Right.
at the time. And it was bought for, I remember, $51,000. And back in those days, it was UDAG, Urban Development Action Grants were prevalent to buy old property, renovate them, and make something useful out of them. As a matter of fact, the farm store parking lot was next door to the now police station, but at the time Central Theater, and behind it was a bakery that
Bedford Baking,
operated
Bedford
that
Baking
operated
Company.
out of a duplex.
Right.
So the UDAG funds bought all those houses on Foss Street,
Right.
bought the parking lot, and next door to that was the Peacock Lounge and a few other places.
I
T
remember that.
Sisters was also the supermarket there, so they bought that property for public parking to go along with the facility, the police station. Now the police station was the design of it cut off 20 feet off the front to make it more attractive, and they put 2 floors in.
Two
You know,
floors.
yeah, there's 2 floors in there now. Total cost of renovations, firing range, furniture, and construction was $771,000.
There's a fire range in there?
Yeah,
No kidding.
yeah, still it's above my office. Of course, then you know the decision was is to buy that building, and at first they thought about building a brand new facility rather than use an existing one.
Right.
And back then I started thinking, I says, well, you know what, and some guys wanted new rather than
Yeah.
rehabilitated.
Everybody wants new, Raj.
And the way I looked at it is that it is a lot easier to have large rooms and expand for the future if you build to the 4 walls rather than build for the present
Right.
and build the 4 walls that contain
Right.
your present needs. And the schools experience that all the time. They only build for today and they don't think about what
They
the
don't
future
think
is
about
going
the
to.
expansion of the
So,
future.
and at the time, they taught that the building was going to be too big for us. You know, it's like this building is too big, blah, blah, blah. And so we used every bit of space. There was a lot of storage space built into it, which today is now office space, you know, so it
Right.
provided our needs and
Right.
met our needs. And there was a classroom, there was a weight room, there was a firing range on the second floors, and a facility where you could have some breathing room and have typewriters to do your reports and
You didn't have that in the old police station?
no, we had one royal typewriter, you know, and it had to be done, you know, I think it was from Mexico. It was Emmanuel.
Did you send it to the did you send it to the museum? That old typewriter?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it's upstairs on display as part of the museum.
Wow, unbelievable.
And so this new facility provided us with IBM Selectrics, where the little ball was moving around, and you could change the fonts, and you'd have corrector tapes built into it. So it was like,
Wow.
wow, could we move ahead now?
Technology.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, what was and at that time when you people moved from the old to the new police department, how many personnel was there at the time? Well, how big was the department? Still the same number as?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's been pretty steady.
Yeah, it's been 38, 39, 40,
Right.
you know, thereabouts.
Right. And in that facility, we're gonna go back. I'm gonna go back a little bit. And you became deputy chief. You were deputy chief. Then you became
78.
right, and then you became acting chief at the age of 29 years old.
Correct.
29 years old, and you know that's amazing for an officer to be a police chief at the age of 29.
Well, that's only chronological. It's your ability and training that guides you. There are some people that are 39 that have no more maturity than somebody who's 19. So you know, it's all relative. Age is
Right. And in
just
yeah,
here
right.
on this earth. That's all.
And in 1981 to the present, you became chief.
Yep.
And describe me. We're going to go from 81 to the present. We're going to go a long stretch now. Okay.
Well, a lot happened between you know, once we came on board with the new facility, you know, and I was officially anointed as the chief of the department. You know, the work had to be done to try to break old habits and create new ones and provide a service to the public that would achieve what I thought a department should have. We got better equipment. We got computers at that point. It's you know, wow. I remember the first couple of you know it was a mainframe computer that
Right.
we got through the Assistant City Hall, and in between whatever. I took every opportunity to keep going and getting in-service training seminars. I'd go away for a week or two of a seminar to expand my knowledge base on modern police techniques and/or dealings with employees and
Right.
and unions and labor interactions, and which all paid off for me very well. Uh, then through the 80s, more federal grants were becoming available.
Right.
And before I decided to apply for one, I would use an experimental feature of it on our own to see if it would work for us.
For the department.
Yeah, before committing 2 or 3 years worth of, saying I'm going to do this for 2 or 3 years, say, well, let's try it first, see if it works, and if it's received locally as a positive thing. And we put the program in place, it was positive, and then the following year applied for the grant to fund the program for the 3 or 4 years, and able to meet commitments that were required under the program.
Uh, you've been chief now for 30 plus years.
Yep.
Okay. I did some research. You you served under 14 mayors in your
Right.
40 years of police service
Yep.
to our community. And that's amazing. It's amazing for, not too many people who can say I served 14 mayors. Well, I'm considering Alan Casavant,
Yep.
the mayor of the city of Biddeford right now.
Well, I remember Alan as a counselor, so I've worked closely with Alan. As a matter of fact, we shared a room up at Bowdoin College for
Kidding.
A seminar that we both attended, because we were going to participate in an alcohol and drug awareness program that dealt with the high school, and that's
Right.
how we both view its importance of dealing with the community.
And the different programs you've instituted over the years. Go ahead.
Oh.
Start to think now. Get you in the hot seat now.
Well, it doesn't feel hot, but okay. Just trying to remember, all the things that have been accomplished.
You did a lot of good for the community, and I want you to.
Well, it took. I didn't do it by myself.
Right.
It takes
Teamwork.
It takes teamwork. It takes dedicated officers who share a vision with you.
Right.
And it takes cooperation and non-interference or support from the political people on the city hall. It requires community support as well, because some of these programs could be popular to start, or could be received as nothing more than a expenditure of funds that other things are needed. But it's like everything else. You're used to having your trash picked up once a week. You kind of overlook at how convenient that is until you lose it. But we went into community policing programs where, I remember starting a community policing program at the pool area. And I remember the mayor chastising me and says, why do you want to set it up there? I'm saying, well, because we're using city dollars, and I'm not sure that how much resource I can commit, and that area pays taxes like everybody else, and they deserve the protection, and they deserve the attention from the police department, just like any other part of the community does.
That's true.
And I want him to establish a local relationship with the residents of Biddeford, Pool, Forces Rocks, and Hills Beach, so we could have an understanding of their needs. And I want to start that unfunded first. And then if it works and it's well received on both parts, then we'll apply federal grants to continue the program. And it was well received, so therefore I applied for funding to add on a police officer full-time, fully funded by the federal government for 3 years to cover that area. From that, we got computers in the cars. That was federal grants. That was, $100,000 was garnered from improvement of software for the computers and putting computers in the cars. The theory behind that was, instead of the guys coming into the station doing their reports And as of today, as today,
Right, yeah.
when people see a car parked on the side of the road, they think they're running radar, they think they're doing whatever, and they're just sitting there and they're saying, oh, they're just sitting here watching us, blah blah blah. No, they're actually visible
To the public.
to the public, and if it slows traffic down, great. But they're actually doing reports in their laptop computers, which is linked to the station, rather than going to the station to do them. So
Technology, Roger, excuse me. Technology has come a long way since you first started over the years. It's amazing, and it's always something brand new in technology coming
Yep.
out.
Yep, yep. Uh, I come up with we're talking about case, and I'm going to bounce around just a little bit here.
Go for it.
Is I remember we used to have to be on standby for court, and of course, until unions came, officers were not obligated to be paid time and a half under federal rules. They were the exemption of the time and a half rule, and unless bargained, they were not eligible to receive time and a half.
Right.
Yeah, they were all straight time. So whatever hours you worked, it was all paid straight time. Until the Fair Labor Standards Act came in, and it's a federal law that says any time that you work more than 40 hours in a pay week, you must be paid time and a half. And they also considered standby time as time and a half. And that's where the complications come in. And the lack of going to seminars and getting this education can cost the cities big bucks if you don't do it right as an administrator. So the thing is recognizing the fact that people were placed on standby to a phone call away to go to court on their court day to avoid costs. It was either that or have them all stand at the courthouse and for 2 or 3 hours and have to pay time and a half. I come up with an innovative, creative idea of saying, well, why don't we just buy 10 beepers, which costs $8 a month,
Right.
and we would beep them so that whether they could go still around the community, and if we needed them, we could page them to go
Right,
respond.
when their case came up in front of the judge.
Yeah, and then we purchased, I remember purchasing a fax machine so we could communicate and send stuff to the courts rather than have to hand carry it, whatever. And I remember this as clearly like it was yesterday. I remember I was working at one of the Larkin Mess festivals as
Right.
I always attended,
Yeah, right.
in uniform, and Lieutenant Marshal Schalt from the state police came up to me. He says, yeah, we got your teletype message, saying the telephone numbers, and he says beepers, and he says, and fax machine. He says, what's a fax machine? It was, they were $1,000, and they are, nothing today, but
Right.
but it's like they had never heard of such a thing, and a lot of places didn't even have fax. Well,
Well,
so
you were a step ahead of them.
well, you try to stay
Right. Go
a
ahead.
step ahead of everybody,
Go ahead,
and that's only to the benefit of your community if you can stay that way, and then from that developed cell phones and
Right.
and today it's unheard of not to have a cell phone and communicate with your people.
And you also, too, you implemented the school resource offices.
Yes, and I remember when I put that in place at the high school. I remember being blasted in a Journal Tribune editorial for that thinking that an officer was necessary in the school, that this was a bad idea, that officers did not belong in the schools. I remember that article was written by Saunders, and that,
From the Journal?
yeah, and said, oh, well, whatever, he's entitled to his opinion, it works for me. He's not a hall monitor, and established
Freedom of speech.
right from the schools, and says, I worked it out with the superintendent, is that this guy here is not to monitor the activity of the kids, that a teacher's responsibility should be minimized. We're not going to have them as a hall monitor and those stuff.
No.
They're there to work with the kids.
Yep.
and establish a link between high school kids and the police. And if they're the victim of being bullied or an assault, or they have a theft, they have this person that they can go to and speak with. And at the same time, this officer, who's specially trained in that type of environment, can redirect a kid's questions to a social service agency should there be abuse in the family, or other non-tolerable conditions at home. Plain and simple.
Yep.
A year later, Sanford PD was the only ones in the area that didn't have a school resource. It's a year later now. And I remember reading the Journal Tribune article criticizing Sanford chief for not putting an SRO in the school. So a year earlier, I was criticized for putting one in, and a year later, once they found the merits of it,
Right.
you know, that the Sanford chief was criticized for not having one.
Well, you know, there's so much things happening throughout today in the school system. You know, look at was it Columbine, where a few years ago, you know, it's not like it's not like when we were in school. It's totally different today.
Well, the thing is too is that this establishes a relationship between us and the school department that virtually was non-existent. You know, in another grant that I wrote up and worked with is our communications, improve our communications
Right.
abilities.
Yes, sir.
That would link the school department, public works department, fire department, and us all on one radio system. We have different frequencies, but I remember that our radio equipment needed to be upgraded. And the fire department was at the time too talking about putting a new tower because theirs, you know, was not efficient. Guy Cassian was talking about he had put money into his budget for a SCADA system which would monitor the pumping stations throughout the city. There's 21 pumping stations throughout the city that have to be, they have to be monitored. Wow. So they used to use the cellular phone connections to do that. And he had put in an additional $50,000 to renovate or put a new antenna up because he had the inability to communicate with his vehicles. So I'm saying, okay, time out, guys. You know, if why don't we all consolidate and mesh our resources and use your dollars that are already committed budget-wise and set forth this program. So I coordinated it. Got some $1.5 million worth of Homeland Security funds at the time to get this project underway, and we now have repeaters throughout the city, and the SCADA system operates on a wireless connection where there's no monthly fee for the cell phone connections, and everything is done with microwaves now rather than by landlines, and we have the interoperability that any school bus can be used to communicate with the PD if we had to use that for evacuation. In addition to that, we got federal dollars to equip all of the school buses. Now, all have video cameras.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, on them. There was a dual purpose of that, is that we got the camera on the stop sign of the bus. So when somebody runs the school bus or fails to stop, they're caught on camera, and also the digital formatting inside the bus keeps track of student activity, and they can identify those who are bullying others. Now, the important thing to remember is that we do not review the internal workings of the cameras of the buses. At first, they wanted us to have access to that, and I refused. I says, you know, I don't want to monitor anybody. If you have a problem and you can identify and take on your responsibilities as a school bus administrator or whatever, and you find you have problems that should be brought to our attention, bring that segment to us, because I don't want to look at it and have access to that.
Let's talk about the centralizing dispatch.
Yep.
Let's go through some of that, and also too, I want to go through the this one. Oh yeah, the mutual aid agreements between Saco and Biddeford. Old Orchard, I mean, I should say too.
Yep. The first agreements for mutual aid was created under then Harry Courtois and Richard Lum, who was the chief of Old Orchard Beach at the time. And I think it was Martin was the chief in Saco. And they recognized the fact it was mostly for Old Orchard, that, you know, that there was a lot of activity. and disturbances in Saco, so they established a mutual aid to take care of predominant problems in Old Orchard Beach. You know, I've just tweaked them up a little bit since then. I've improved them. We no longer have a relationship with Old Orchard Beach.
Right, because now it's in Sanford now.
Well, that was the radio came later. The radio mutual aid stuff came under my administration.
Oh, it did?
You know, yeah.
Right.
Because I wanted, I remember back in I want to say early 90s, I wanted to have a 911 system. And the only way to do that is to merge with Saco, because it had to have, it was exchange specific. So we couldn't have our own 911
Right.
system
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time.
I understand.
And it wasn't enhanced, it was just you dial 911 and it would dial into us. And we agreed to take the leadership role in that, because it was an expense, a slight expense to Biddeford, and Saco didn't want to put the pony up the money, but, you know, so all we did is transfer the calls to them at that time.
There's two departments I'm looking, two more things I would like to talk about, and we're going to go into something else. Animal control and code enforcement.
Yep.
Can you explain to me a little bit of that?
Yep.
Those implementations.
Well, animal control was, that's funny how that evolved. There was an ordinance at the time on the city's books that the city of Biddeford would have a dog officer appointed by the mayor every 2 years. And it was always the same guy who was appointed, but he was answerable to the mayor. And he wasn't, I'm not sure how he was paid by the dog or whatever, but he was not an employee per se. He just had that appointed position for the city. Once that guy retired, then they put on another guy was hired. He was doing community work, animal control work for Saco, Arundel, and a few other places. And city hired him. Well, they had some disputes or whatever, and then I was asked by the then city manager, Benway, if I would take on the department, and I did.
Good, good.
And code enforcement was a grant that was written up because it was an idea that I had, is that code enforcement enforces the codes, we enforce the laws, and people get confused where the dividing line is, and it only made sense that if we would create a position on the police department, and one was funded under a grant, and have a representative from the fire department, one from the police, to work with codes at a unified position of enforcement, to look at the different components of things. So that's how that got created.
Good.
I have a guy assigned to MDEA. I have another one assigned to the DEA, and I have another person who is assigned to the marshal's office.
Wow. Roger, I'd like to talk a little bit more, because we're running pretty close. You serve on many city committees and state representative. City staff representative, yeah, for the city, I should say.
Yeah.
Can you give me a brief description?
Yeah, I serve on the policy committee,
Right.
which establishes pretty much the ordinances, everything except traffic,
Right.
that govern the operations of the city. And I also sit on the operations capital projects committee, which deals with, among other things, traffic laws, parking ordinances, and so on and so forth.
Right. And also, too, you volunteered over the years for BAA,
Yep.
different organizations, I
That
see.
puts me in touch with the public.
Right. I don't blame you. Have you got anything else to say before we close our program? Anything that we might have forgotten?
Well, the only thing that I want to stress is the fact that, some people view my position as a political animal, but it really has not been. All the mayors have had enough confidence and respect in my ability to run the department that through discussion,
I'm sure they do.
And whatever disputes that we've had, as minor as they've been, usually get resolved by having an understanding of what each other's roles are, and understanding limitations that or governances that exist by either state or federal laws, and that we really want to accomplish the same things. The mayors want to improve Biddeford, as do I. And unfortunately, sometimes people don't like it when we
Well,
say
a
no.
lot of them don't see eye to eye either.
Well, they want you to enforce things that until they get caught, and then all of a sudden now it's not popular anymore. And you know, the unfortunate part about it is that, you know, the officers do take actions and do their job, and as a result of that, people get upset with me, you know, and you lose friends as a result of it. But if you lose friends over that, then I guess they weren't friends to begin with.
It's a
you
job.
know?
It's a job that somebody has to do in
But
our city.
I've had a good trip.
Yep, and I hope
Well,
you last longer too.
well, I feel energized still.
Good.
I feel progressive, and I think there are things still that need to be done, and having community support to do it is the greatest thing.
Well, I want to thank you very much, and I want to thank the Biddeford Police Department for me to interview you. I really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure.
Okay, Roger. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Hi, I'm your host, Roger Hirschbees. I hope you enjoyed this program today like I did. Until next time, thank you for watching.